Not sure why. It's back. Okay, that's interesting. Um, yes, so, okay, sorry, I just got that message. So, yes, the audio wasn't working. So, let me start from the beginning. And thank you very much for highlighting that. I hope it's working now. Brilliant. Thank you very much. So, uh, welcome all to the LinkedIn Live. Really excited to be here today. It's the first Wednesday of the month, and really that's the time where I'm really excited because I get to meet all of you live, and people are online. We get this interaction. I get the messages, and so it's brilliant. So for today's session or today's topic, I'm really going to explain a bit about problem structuring and suggest or share with you the three main tips when it comes to problem structuring. And it's based on an article that I've written in Strategic Finance, which was peer reviewed, which just means someone else has read it and said, yes, that makes sense. And that person is an expert in the area as well. So I'll share with you the three tips. But before I go ahead and share that, let me first explain a bit what is problem structuring and why I think it is not given enough attention in the business. So, problem structuring, there should be a problem statement in any project. And that should clearly explain why we're doing this project and the desired outcome or the outcome that we want. Why? What is the results? Not the answer, but really we want to answer this main question. And obviously, we'll know the stakeholders and all that, and who's sponsoring the project and why the request is in, and the business as well, the business side of it, and why do we need to make it from a business wise, so the pound value or the dollar value. So that is what normally goes when you start a project. Problem structuring is the phase where you really say, okay, let's now make sure that this is what we want to solve. We have the right stakeholders on board, and um, those are the questions that we're answering basically. And I'll go through that more in the three tips. But before I go through that, I'll explain first why problem structuring is not given that much attention, or I think why it is not given that much attention. First is the skill sets, the technical and business skill sets. So the teams, they're quite excited about a topic when a project comes through. So the technical team would like to go ahead and do the technical work, and they would like to start the coding or, do all this kind of complex stuff. Just brilliant. And then the business people on the other side, they are very focused on the business, which is again, they are business people. So they want to go ahead and either do the business side of the project or do other business stuff that needs to be done. So that's the first thing. The second thing that's obviously as a result as well from the first is problem structuring skills. So this kind of the need to have a person who kind of understands, bridges the gap between the technical and the business, which is very important because this skill set is not easy to find and it is quite challenging. So that person will be challenging both the technical people and the business people, as well as showing them the art of the possible. So that person will show them. So when I'm doing a problem structuring skill session, whether at work or in the research as a research consultant, what I do is get everyone in the room and I share the art of the possible. I challenge the technical people, in a good way, and challenge the business to make sure we are answering the right questions. The third thing is the business culture. Obviously, if you want to go through a project and make sure that that's the right project for you, for the business, then you'll be investing some time. And a lot of the time, the business, and this is part of the business culture, saying, you know what, before we start this project and before we sign it off, it's not only the pound value that we need to have, it's actually making sure that we are answering the right questions in the right way. So normally when I do a problem structuring session, what happens is I invite different people from the organization, stakeholders, and that is like half a day and sometimes a day workshop, depending on the project itself. But it is quite tight. It is a lot of investment. It's a You have a lot of people in the room, and many of the times it is actually their senior people. So I believe that those are the three reasons why we don't have enough um, talk in the business about problem structuring and given this time upfront to ensure we have it. So, to be able to do problem structuring, as I said, it's normally a half a day or a day workshop. And the reason why a problem structuring is done is to make sure that we answer the right questions. So I go in and I say, okay, today we're going to go through some questions, ask the team, work together in a workshop, identify and then go through different routes depending on really the project. After this problem structuring session, normally you do it for several projects, and then you start to prioritize based on so many things, based on the pound value, based on the strategy of the organization, the skill set as well within the organizations, and the skill set that is available to do the project. But let me tell you three tips when doing a problem structuring session. And the first is understand the real need. Why are we doing this project? So if you're doing a visualization, or you're doing an artificial intelligence model, or whatever it is you're doing, why are you doing it? What is the need? And there is a difference between a need and the want. And as a leader for that project, or leading the project problem structuring session, you need to make sure that by the end of the session, your suggestions and the agreement is based on the need of the organization. So that is really important. um, and also the second thing is understand who are the users. So why are you doing this project? Yes, but also who wants the answers. Is it Are you speaking to C-suite? Are you speaking to executives? Are you speaking to managers? Are you speaking to operations? So whatever the project is, you need to understand who wants the answer, so that you can tailor the whole project to that. An operational project is very, very different than a strategy project, and the business needs both. So, for example, and I'll give just a very simple example. If we're doing a visualization project, so you want to have reporting, you want that at different level. The reports that the executive will see are different than your managers, senior managers, different than the operations. But also, you want to make sure that the data that feeds in is connected and it is right, the accuracy of it. So a project is not as simple as let's just set up some dashboards. It's more complex than that. And the complexity comes from the usage. So this is, again, know your stakeholders really well, because it is very important when doing problem structuring. The third tip that I'll give is uh, really understand the problem complexity. And this is such a big topic, but it is very, very important. And yeah, again, while I'm doing that, please do share your questions in the chat, and I want to make sure that I answer those questions as well. Also, if you're watching that on replay, put your questions in the comment, whether on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitter, and I'll make sure to answer. So the first tip I said was understand the real need. The second tip is understand your users. The third tip is really understand the complexity of the project. So the problem complexity of the project, and I'll explain that in three different ways. There is a well-structured problem, and there is a semi-structured problem, and the third is ill-structured problem. So the first is the structured problem, which is a very straightforward. You have a problem, you know the stakeholders, the connections are there, everything is in the data asset. For example, a visualization, and you know that you want a certain KPI. That's as simple as it can be. And you can simply do that. That's not a problem. So that is That is the well-structured project. A semi-structured project is when um, it is not very complex, but it's not very simple. So, for example, you want to have marketing campaigns across markets, and when there is a new product. So the team doesn't have the data, but you can get the data in the data asset. And then, so it's not very simple. So you're building your data in the data lake, and then from the different regions, you need this connection, and then you need to create the visualization. It's complex. It can be done. You, based on experience, you know who your contacts are, or you can reach out and get those contacts. So this is a semi-structure. So a problem that is not very complex, but it's not very simple either. The third bit, when it comes to understanding the problem complexity, is ill-structured problems, which is when you don't really know how even to approach the problem. Example of that would be COVID. When it hit and we started all those shutdowns across the globe, um, we started, or not shutdowns, but really the isolations and all that, and we started saying, okay, countries shutting down, and we were like, okay, how do we measure sales? What will be the next step? Are we going to lockdowns or not? It is something that the organizations are not used to, and they don't know how to approach. We haven't seen it before. So this is a very ill-structured project. And I can see a question here about how complexity come with usage. So someone is, let me overlay it here. How can complexity, so this is a LinkedIn question, how complexity come with usage, please? Complexity, yes, complexity and usage can lead to complexity. And feel free to add more explanation to the question. I'll answer it based on how I understood it, which is basically how usage and complexity are linked. But please do add your more questions, like the explanation. I'm more than happy to dig into into it if I don't answer it. So the linkage between usage and complexity. So if you have, and I'll go through different areas with that. So this is quite a question. That is an interesting question that can take you into different areas, and I'll just go through them all. The first is the number of users that you'll have, and across regions, that can create a complex project, because if you don't have the right setup and you don't know it, again, this can be an ill-structured project problem, because you haven't done it before, you don't know where to start, you don't know even who to give access to, and all of a sudden you actually need to get this set up for this project. So this is the usage in terms of usage of the project itself. When it comes to technically, I mean logging in and seeing dashboards and so on. The other part of it is actually the complexity of usage in terms of answering the question. So if your users, if you don't have your clear stakeholders defined, and that's part of the usage, because those people are the one who are going to use your product, whether that product is a model that is with a result that they'll use the result at the end, or a visualization, or whatever it is from a data perspective, or even just putting a data asset, building the data asset for that team. So obviously, if the usage is if you don't know who the users are, and you don't know which market they are in, country or whatever, that creates a complexity, because do they have the skill set? Do you know the problems that they have? Because you can answer a problem that can be in the UK is very different than, the answer can be different than France. The answer can be different than Italy, or even out of Europe, in the US, or Asia or Africa, or so there's so many. It can get very complex. So I hope this answers the question of how complexity can come with usage. But please do let me know if you if you want more details. I'm more than happy to share, because it is important. especially when you're doing the problem structuring bit to understand the complexity. So thank you for that question. Those are the three main things, really, or the three tips that I would suggest when you do a problem structuring project. Again, please share with me your questions or your comments if you're watching this live now on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitter, and equally, if you have any questions, if you're watching this on replay, please do let me know, and I'll make sure to answer them in the comments. Yes, seems I answered the question. Okay, so thank you very much for that. um, so problem, I'll just wrap it up really and say problem structuring, the way I think about it, where from a research consultancy perspective and from someone who's been working in this area for a while now, problem structuring is a science. It is an art and it is a skill set. You can have it or you can acquire it. Make sure that your team has the skill set and make sure that the wider team appreciates its importance. And before you set off working on a project, make sure you stand on solid grounds. And the problem structuring will get you up to speed and make you and help you stand on this solid ground. So I believe, I always say to tell my team, and I've always said that time invested properly upfront will save a lot of time later on in the project in terms of rework. So make sure to invest the right time in problem structuring, and you'll get the benefit later on. So I hope that answers the question that was raised, and I hope that answers the question about problem structuring. Leave your comments again on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter, and I'll make sure to answer them. And have a lovely evening. Enjoy the rest of Wednesday, evening or morning, depends on where you are located. And yeah, looking forward to hearing all your comments and suggestions. See you next Wednesday.